Machine gun fire rattles beneath the jungle canopy. Troops surge through the undergrowth as FA-18s scream south from carrier decks and paratroopers descend on 5 cities at once. Latin America is under siege, and the world holds its breath. Could the United States actually pull this off? If you think you know how this ends, think again. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we explore what would really happen if the U.S. tried to take over Latin America. Just over 100,000 long tons of floating American power projection sits 200 miles off the coast of Venezuela. The USS Gerald R. Ford has been operating there for months, ever since the United States launched its first official war on the cartels. Its deck is organized chaos, waiting. Then, the order is given. In a bunker beneath Doral, Florida, the U.S. Southcom commander gives a single word: execute. That signal races to Fort Meade, where cyber specialists trigger malware planted years ago inside Latin America's power grids. Within 3 minutes, entire capitals go dark. Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Bogota, Lima. Traffic freezes, hospitals flicker, trains grind to a halt in the tunnels. The U.S. proved the concept with Stuxnet in 2010. That was surgical. This is continental. At 0415, a second strike hits. This time, space. GPS, the invisible clock that runs modern life, power grids, financial networks, and cell towers all syncing to it. Take it away, and infrastructure begins cannibalizing itself within minutes. It is the secret weapon modern democracies prayed they would never have to deploy. 15 minutes later, the visible war begins. On the USS Gerald R. Ford, FA-18 Super Hornets launch every 90 seconds, each carrying 4 2,000-pound JDAMs, 47 targets, 47 air defense sites that took decades to build, all gone before sunrise. All that remains are smoking craters. Brazil's once vaunted Sabre M60 radar network, built in partnership between Embraer and the Brazilian Army, gets hit first. Capable of tracking 40 targets simultaneously by integrating a low-altitude anti-air defense system, the installations just suddenly cut out, their antennas shredded by precision munitions traveling at Mach 2. Venezuela's Russian S-300 systems fare worse. Those batteries cost $500 million each. They are obliterated before operators can even rotate their launchers. By 0445, 16,000 American paratroopers from the American 82nd Airborne Division are approaching their drop zone. Deployed from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, their C-17 Globemasters are thundering south at 500 miles an hour, targeting Mexico City, Bogota, Lima, Brasilia, and Buenos Aires. Their mission is on the scale of Operation Varsity, the Allies' final airborne leap across the Rhine in March 1945. That drop had been a success. This time, the Americans are less confident. This scale alone is mind-boggling. Mexico City, population 9 million, is about to have 3,000 American paratroopers land in its government district. So are the capitals of Colombia, Peru, Brazil, and Argentina. This is Normandy times 5, all happening at once in cities filled with civilians and armed police. The entire Iraq War peak deployment was 170,000 troops controlling a country the size of California. Latin America is almost 8 million square miles with 650 million people. But nobody's thinking about occupation math yet. Right now it's about speed, shock, overwhelming force before anyone can organize resistance. And that's why the paratroopers aren't landing alone. 15 minutes after their drop, the U.S. Marines hit the beaches on both coasts simultaneously. Camp Pendleton's 1st Marine Division storms Pacific ports, Acapulco, Buenaventura, Callao. Camp Lejeune's 2nd Marine Division takes the Atlantic side. Veracruz, Cartagena, Santos. Amphibious assault ships disgorge AAV-7 armored vehicles onto beaches, while AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters provide cover fire. They had trained for island hopping in the Pacific. This was a different order. These targets are major commercial ports handling billions in annual trade. Every container ship, every dock worker, every longshoreman is now in a combat zone. This will take a deft touch to navigate the potential minefield. Fortunately for the Marines, U.S. Special Operations Forces didn't wait for H-hour. They've been in country for weeks. Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, all of them all at once. They're supposed to leave the military installations to the, well, more expendable Marines. Their targets are people, generals, intel chiefs, government ministers. Anyone who might coordinate resistance has been under surveillance for months. Their dossiers passed to strike teams are now closing in on their homes, their commutes, their offices. In Caracas, a 3-man SEAL team breaches a compound housing Venezuela's military intelligence director. In Mexico City, Delta operators hit the home of the defense secretary. In Brasilia, Green Berets eliminate the chief of staff for Brazil's armed forces. Simultaneous raids across 24 cities. It's the Bin Laden raid on steroids. 90 minutes into the invasion, while Latin America still struggles to turn the lights back on, 5 B-2 Spirit bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri reach their target. Each one carries 16 2,000-pound JDAMs, 96,000 pounds of precision explosives raining down on the continent's key communications hubs, military headquarters, and transport choke points. Since the vaunted B-2 is effectively invisible to radar, by the time Latin America knows about it, the bombs are already falling. TV stations, radio towers, internet backbone facilities, all of it goes up in flames and smoke. Major bridges, railway hubs, highway interchanges, and more get knocked out of commission. A third wave of targets includes ammo depots, fuel storage facilities, and maintenance complexes. Each interlocking piece of the puzzle is designed to complement the others. By 0600, the opening phase of the world's most audacious invasion is complete. 19 countries are without power, GPS is all but jammed, air defenses obliterated. 5 capitals have foreign troops in their government districts. Key military and political leadership is dead or missing. And the sun is just now starting to rise over the Atlantic. This is America's superpower at full throttle. This is what $885 billion in annual defense spending looks like when unleashed without restraint. This is shock and awe perfected over 3 decades of post-Desert Storm warfare. This is also the easy part, because right now, 360,000 Brazilian troops are mobilizing. Colombia's 293,000 battle-hardened soldiers, veterans of 50 years fighting FARC's Marxist guerrillas in mountainous jungles, are moving to defensive positions. Mexico's military is no slouch either, and it is deploying along the Rio Grande. If you thought any of those forces were going to just surrender because the lights went out, you're wrong. But they're not the only ones keeping the Pentagon planners up at night. The thing is, the cartels are waking up too. By 0630, Brazil's military command center in Brasilia is in chaos. Half of the generals are dead or missing. The other half are trying to mobilize a couple 100,000 troops with no power, no GPS, and no functioning communication network. Still, Brazil's been preparing for asymmetric warfare since the 1960s. They don't really need satellites to fight, a reality that has escaped American planners until now. Commanders revert to radio, motorcycle couriers, runners. Within 2 hours, a fuller picture is emerging. The unthinkable is happening, and in response, 3 mechanized cavalry brigades are moving towards Sao Paulo. It is slow, it's analog, but it is happening. Colombia is, well, it's worse. Their military spent 52 years fighting FARC in the jungles where you can't see 50 feet ahead. The troops have all but perfected ambush and guerrilla warfare against an enemy that knew every trail, every cave, and every escape route, and they still lost. Or rather, fought to a bloody stalemate that only ended when both sides were just too exhausted to continue. Now they're facing American forces equipped with the world's best equipment and air support in that same terrain. Coming in north of 400,000 personnel, the Mexican military has a unique problem. Their enemy is also their neighbor. There's no ocean separating them from American logistics, but there's also no ocean protecting American cities. Monterrey is 300 miles from San Antonio. Ciudad Juarez is across the river from El Paso. Within hours, Mexican artillery units are positioning along the border, fully aware that they might well lose their lives trying to make American supply lines bleed. Down in Mexico City, 3,000 American paratroopers have just landed in Chapultepec Park, one of the many green spaces in the heart of Mexico's capital. It's just over an hour's march to the presidential palace. The landing was textbook. Tight formation, minimal casualties, equipment intact. Within minutes, they've established a perimeter. Then the city wakes up. The first assumption isn't war, it's disaster relief. Maybe an earthquake happened overnight, maybe a terrorist attack. People pull out their phones checking the news. Nothing. Still no power. A Mexican patrol officer halts at the expanding perimeter. He radios his commander for orders. His commander has no idea. Nobody does. With communications down, no orders are flowing from Central Command. By 0645, the 82nd is advancing toward Los Pinos, the presidential complex. They're moving fast, weapons ready, establishing checkpoints. Civilians scatter. Now it is clear this isn't a joint operation. This is an invasion. A Mexican army convoy, 3 trucks carrying 40 soldiers, rounds a corner and comes face to face with an American roadblock. The lead Mexican officer dismounts, hands raised in confusion, not surrender. In Spanish, he's asking, "What's happening? Who authorized this? Are you supporting the government?" The American lieutenant doesn't speak Spanish. All he sees is the Mexican military approaching. The rules of engagement are clear. Anyone who doesn't immediately comply is potentially hostile. He orders the Mexican commander to lay down his weapons, but the commander doesn't understand. English shouted under stress is just noise. His men glance at him, terrified, waiting for direction. Some lift their rifles, not to fire but out of instinct, trying to understand if they're about to be attacked. 3 seconds of confusion. That's all it takes. Then an American M4 cracks. A Mexican soldier falls, and all hell breaks loose. 45 seconds later, 12 Mexican soldiers are dead, 2 Americans wounded. The survivors on both sides are calling for backup. That firefight, born from confusion, not combat doctrine, gets uploaded to X within minutes by a Mexican user with access to Starlink. An irony of ironies. Americans massacre Mexican army in Mexico City. In Bogota, the shock spreads. Colombian soldiers guarding the defense ministry watch 82nd Airborne paratroopers descending through early morning clouds. They're radioing headquarters as American paratroopers drop from the sky. They too want orders. Headquarters doesn't answer. At 0645, a Delta Force team breached the defense minister's home. The senior officer on site makes a decision to create a defensive perimeter around the ministry. They won't fire unless fired upon. The American paratroopers approaching the ministry see Colombian soldiers taking defensive positions, weapons ready. The American commander tries Spanish on a loudspeaker. He tells them to lay down their weapons. The building is under U.S. military control. A Colombian sergeant questions his authority. For 5 minutes, it's a standoff. American forces continue to surround the building. Colombian forces inside barricaded but not attacking. If this moment had lasted, maybe someone could have negotiated something. Then, the AC-130 gunship providing overwatch sees Colombian reinforcements. 2 trucks, 40 soldiers approaching from the east. The pilot requests permission to engage. Permission granted. The trucks explode, and a fireball visible across downtown Bogota. 40 Colombian soldiers dead before they knew they were targets. Inside the ministry, the Colombians hear the explosion and watch their reinforcements die on security cameras. The decision is made for them. The firefight lasts 30 minutes. American forces take the ministry, but 14 paratroopers are killed and the building is rubble. By 7 a.m. in Sao Paulo's famous Paraisópolis favela, people are hearing whispers that Americans have invaded Latin America. Except, invaded still sounds wrong. Invaded from where? What's happening? Here, the Brazilians don't need the military to resist. Local PCC gang members, members of Latin America's biggest organized drug gang, are getting messages from leadership. Americans are in the city, hitting military targets. They don't quite know how this will affect their bottom line. Will it help, or is this some sort of government operation, maybe targeting Cartel specifically? Charlie Company from the 82nd Airborne begins advancing up the favela hillside. Residents watch from the windows, confused and frightened, wondering where the Brazilian police have gone. They are asking the same questions. A group of young men, all of them PCC members, debate amongst themselves. Did Bolsonaro sell them out to the Americans? One of them, 19 years old, decides to find out. He steps toward the American line, hands visible but not raised, calling out in Portuguese, asking why they're there. A young American soldier, clearly amped up on adrenaline, orders him onto the ground. The young man doesn't speak English. He keeps approaching, still calling out the questions. Then, the soldier fires, center mass. The young man drops. His friends watch from a window 30 feet away. They just watched an American kill their friend for asking a question. They grab weapons, AKs, Uzis, AR-15s, shotguns, anything they can get their hands on, and open fire. The Americans are ready. Within seconds, it's a full engagement. More PCC members join in. Residents trapped in their homes are screaming, children crying. Someone fires an RPG from a rooftop. It misses but explodes against a wall, showering soldiers with shrapnel. Charlie Company calls in air support. An F-22 arrives in minutes and begins engaging targets. Except in a favela, there's no such thing as a military target that isn't also someone's home. Each round of its 20mm Gatling gun sparks an existential anger that won't easily go back into the bottle. By the time Charlie Company withdraws, 7 American soldiers are wounded, 3 dead. Favela casualties are 43 dead, including 16 civilian residents who happened to be in buildings that got hit. Meanwhile, in Acapulco, cartels are also realizing it's open season on American soldiers. When the 1st Marine Division hit the beaches, they had been watching with binoculars from hillside villas. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel controls eastern Acapulco. They have been fighting the Mexican military and police for years. They assumed American forces were here to support the Mexican government. Increased pressure on the cartels. Maybe DEA-led operations. Then intelligence comes through cartel networks. Americans are hitting everything. There is no Mexican government to support anymore. The CJ&G regional commander makes a calculation. If Americans are attacking Mexican sovereignty and Mexican forces are fighting Americans, then the enemy of my enemy is, well, it's still complicated. But more importantly, with government forces distracted or destroyed, with American forces spread thin across the entire continent, with chaos everywhere, this is the greatest opportunity the cartels have ever had. They give the order to engage. The first Marine convoy moving inland from the beach gets hit with an ambush. Hastily assembled IEDs made from fertilizer explosive disable the lead LAV-25. Immediately, automatic weapons fire from elevated positions in buildings on both sides. An RPG hits the rear vehicle, trapping the convoy. Marines return fire with overwhelming force. M240 machine guns, Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers, the works. The buildings where fire originated collapse under the assault. Cartel fighters melt away, and that is the tactic. All they want to do is make Americans bleed and then disappear. 4 Marines dead, 11 wounded. The convoy limps back toward the beach. Cartel fighters recover a fallen Marine's rifle and gear. His body is dumped onto a highway beneath a narco manta that reads, "This is what happens to invaders, CJ&G." The message spreads across cartel networks within an hour. Americans are fair game, kill them. There's no law anymore, there's no government, just territory and power. When the U.S. Marines move in to secure Monterrey's industrial district, they encounter something that shouldn't exist: Mexican army soldiers and cartel gunmen fighting alongside each other. A Mexican convoy advances down a main avenue. From the left, cartel sicarios open fire from a warehouse. From the right, Mexican soldiers unleash bursts from behind concrete barriers. They're not coordinating, but it doesn't matter. The result is still the same. The Marines are caught in the crossfire. An LAV-25's 25mm autocannon rakes the Mexican army positions. Bodies in uniform fall. The sicarios use the distraction to maneuver, firing RPGs. One hits an MRAP, killing 2 Marines inside. Apache gunships arrive and start engaging everything, including cartel positions, Mexican military vehicles, and any armed person in the zone. The industrial district becomes a kill box. Videos of dead Mexican soldiers, their bodies shredded by 25mm rounds, go viral. In encrypted communications across Mexico and Central America, something unprecedented happens as leaders from rival cartels start to talk. Sinaloa, CJ&G, Zetas, Gulf Cartel, Knights Templar. Cartels have been killing each other for decades. Right now, Americans are killing them indiscriminately. DEA rules don't apply anymore. This is a war of survival. By 1400 hours, a truce is declared. Not a peace, a temporary alliance against a common existential threat. The combined force is staggering, encompassing hundreds of thousands of cartel members across Mexico and Central America. Unlimited funding from drug revenue, weapon stockpiles that include 50 caliber machine guns, RPGs, even captured military equipment. More importantly, they know the terrain and the population. They have been fighting an insurgency against their own government for years. The U.S. military just created the most dangerous insurgent force in the Western Hemisphere's history, and it's been 6 hours. By the early afternoon, things are already starting to spiral out of control. In Caracas, an FA-18 Super Hornet locks onto an S-300 air defense battery outside of the city. Intelligence confirms it's Venezuelan military. The pilot is cleared hot. 2 AGM-88 HARM missiles streak toward the target, direct hits. The battery explodes in a fireball. 3 hours later, Moscow announces that 4 Russian military advisors were killed in the strike. They were training Venezuelan operators on the S-300 system. The Kremlin's statement is ice cold. It claims Russia will take necessary measures to protect its citizens and interests. Nobody knows what that means, but suddenly everyone is wondering when this unprovoked invasion stops being a regional conflict and becomes World War III. Even more problematically, at the port of Chancay, a $3.6 billion Chinese-funded deepwater port near Lima, Peru, U.S. Marines move in to secure the site, expecting minimal resistance. Maybe a few Peruvian guards, maybe some civilian contractors. They find 200 Chinese security personnel instead, donning tactical gear and modern weapons to defend Chinese assets. In the ensuing standoff, the Marines know they can't leave a potentially hostile force in their rear. But attacking Chinese nationals could escalate this beyond anyone's control. While they're negotiating, Peruvian military forces, backed by local resistance, attack. The Chinese don't help either side, they just defend their perimeter, watch and record everything. Within hours, that intelligence will be distributed to every resistance group on the continent. 24 hours in, the butcher's bill has come. Official U.S. casualties, 127 dead, 341 wounded. Latin American military casualties, 3,000 to 5,000 estimated. Cartel casualties unknown but substantial. Civilian casualties no reliable count, hundreds, maybe thousands. Nobody is counting bodies in destroyed buildings yet. But the strategic situation is worse than the numbers suggest. Every civilian death creates more insurgents. Every confused Mexican soldier killed becomes a martyr. Every video of American forces destroying homes gets shared millions of times. U.S. Southcom holds an emergency video conference. Every major objective is technically achieved. Capitals occupied, air superiority maintained, leadership decapitated. But every ground commander is saying the same thing. The real insurgency hasn't even started yet. The second day brings expanded operations. Marines push inland from coastal beachheads, securing oil infrastructure in Venezuela and copper mines in Chile, most already razed by fleeing workers. The 101st Airborne drops into secondary cities across Colombia and Peru. More special forces raids eliminate remaining military leadership. Drone strikes hit cartel compounds across Mexico, killing hundreds but turning thousands more into active insurgents. By hour 48, U.S. forces occupy 17 capitals and 40 major cities. And they didn't even need a huge armored or mechanized presence to do it. Every conventional military objective has been achieved. Air superiority is total. Regional governments destroyed. But if you've been reading between the lines, you know the writing is already on the wall. The true story is what happens next. 3 million refugees flood borders within the first week. Caribbean islands collapse under the weight. Mexico's northern border sees 100,000 people crossing daily. Border Patrol is overwhelmed in hours. Cholera appears in refugee camps by day 5. Sao Paulo runs out of food by day 4. Mexico City's water treatment fails, leaving 22 million people drinking contaminated water. The death toll from disease and starvation will eventually dwarf combat casualties. Within a month, the insurgency is thriving. Daily IED attacks, sniper fire, ambushes on every supply convoy. Turns out, unprovoked invasions are bad at making friends out of initial enemies. U.S. casualties climb to 40 to 60 per day every week. Every patrol is a potential death sentence. Every base operates under siege conditions. The unified cartels, now armed with Chinese weapons and trained by Cuban intelligence, control vast rural territories. They are the true shadow operators, providing food and security where American forces can't reach. They're targeted with impunity. But like a many-headed hydra, their leadership never seems to die. In order to maintain provisional order and control over Latin America, 6 months in, the draft is reinstated in the United States amid massive protests. The U.S. economy enters a depression. 15% unemployment, 25% inflation, gas at $12 a gallon, wind stations have supply. China becomes the dominant global power by default. Russia and Iran are emboldened across the Middle East and Eastern Europe. NATO is functionally dead. Europe's former allies have walked away, cutting their own security details with Beijing. By year 1, 8,000 American soldiers are dead, and the Amazon is burning, an area the size of Texas consumed by uncontrolled fires. Oil spills have created oceanic dead zones from Venezuela to Brazil. U.S. forces control city centers during daylight hours. The insurgents own everything else after dark. There's no exit strategy because there's no victory condition. Military historians estimate 30 to 50 years minimum to pacify Latin America, if it's even theoretically possible. Projected cost, $15+ trillion. American casualties will far exceed those lost in all wars since World War II combined. As it turned out, the superpower that could destroy anything learned it couldn't control everything. The US might be able to take over Latin America in just 48 hours, but taking over a superpower, that would be a whole different story. Watch What If the US Invades Russia day by day to see how that war would unfold, or click on this video instead.